It's been a while since I got a video out, but lots of progress happening. In this video, got lots of stuff going on, but I'm going to build my own sheet metal brake and put it to use. Drive shaft is back from my buddy with a lathe. So he turned it down. I told him about 5/16 of an inch. So that'll go in there and not take up much of the slip, which this won't need much slip, but I still don't want to have it bottom out badly. Now, the bummer is I was hoping this was going to be a real tight fit, such that it would help stay lined up. But he over machined it. So it's a little bit of a you get what you pay for here. So I got to figure out how I'm going to make this thing straight, because I cut that off with an angle grinder and this is loose enough. I mean, I can jam it in all kind of crooked. That's not going to do me any good. So I think I'm going to maybe put a tack on it so that I can kind of bend it around and then try and figure out a good way to measure it and hold it. In a case study of impatience, I just kind of eyeballed it, used a square off of there, and burned it all together, which is a terrible idea. But we're going to see what happens. Tonight I was feeling like I wanted it to look more like a Jeep again. So I cut the slats in the grill. Those might get plated in, but this gives me a good fit. Make sure the rope's not going to get into it, which it's not. And from most angles, you can't tell it's there. I think it's kind of cool. I'll probably end up capping those, but I don't have any sheet metal thin enough for the job. Came over here, cut these off, because you remember when these were standing up, they hit the hood, but just barely. So got that cleaned up on both sides. Those will get a little more flap wheelage at some point just to level them out, but pretty happy with those. Might go grab the hood, because it'd be pretty cool if this had a hood on it. And then maybe I'll start working on hood hinges. I'm going to decide if it's going to be hood hinges or 4 pins, but kind of thinking hinges is the way to go. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3. Again, these are threaded Allen tabs. If the body has to come off, basically I'll use some tabs to join all the sheets together. So somebody could go around with an impact and Allen head and zip. You could zip the whole side of the car off really fast. So these don't need to be Zeus fasteners as far as I'm concerned. Not going to come off that often, and if they do, it's easy tool access. So it also allows me to replace things if they get chewed up, but I need to go drill holes in the door and come back. Well, got other projects away tonight, so back to the buggy. So I'm working on mounting this back floor panel, and basically I decided to go ahead and do the Zeus fittings on one side. That way I can lock the panel in, then go to the other side. There's no chance it's moving or shimmying as I'm working on it, because it's a big panel, hard to clamp down. So about halfway there. You can see 3 pins in this side. Now move the welder and all the equipment over there, and we'll sand it. I think it's going to be 6 pins, but I'll probably add one in the center at the back, so probably 7 to get this out. But I just want to be careful what I put in the middle, because if I got center consoles or electronics running through there, I don't want to make it a pain. I've been staring out here a lot at how I wanted to gusset this. On my last car, I did a round tube gusset that I Frenched in, which was pretty cool, but I didn't think it necessarily fit the style of this car, and then I needed to do a gusset down here. So I decided to just go for the double B pillar. So the main B pillar here is 2 inch. This is 1 3/4 inch, which I think you got to be looking at it to really notice that, but it's not the main structural tube. It's just a little bit to add some structure and a little bit of crash safety next to your head. And it's far enough back that I don't think anybody's helmet's going to be hitting on the tube. So kind of dig it. It's just got a few tacks on it. If I decide over the next few weeks I don't like it, then I'll take it out. Floor panel is fastened in. I might add one right in the middle back there. Don't mind the gap there. That'll get closed up. But everything fits nice, comes out easy. Pretty pleased with it. All right, Chris, you can see the drive shaft there. Front yoke's gonna be basically right on top of that tube, which is obviously behind the pivots of the links, but it keeps that protected, and it's the length of drive shaft that I have. I think it's gonna be just fine. What do you think? Decided to move the seats up the height of this tab, about 3/4 of an inch up, well, about 1 inch up, basically. And I did these tabs because I realized with the seats mounted flush against the angle iron, it's just gonna be really hard to build a floor panel that seals up and gets out of there and doesn't have to be in a million pieces. So with this, I can use that single piece that I put across by putting holes in it like this. So basically I drew lines underneath that are the seat rails, and then I made a little template of the shape that I want to cut out to fit the tab and the welded nut on the back of it to pass through. And this opening seals up against the top of the angle iron, so the floor will be sealed very nicely. These obviously need to get cleaned up with a file or something, but I'm going to mark the other ones, draw them out, cut them, and basically I'm drilling the 3 corners. You can see here 1, 2, 3 holes, and then using an angle cutter or a grinder to cut off in between. It's turning out pretty clean. So it'll still be one plate. The nuts are welded, so it won't be that hard to get the seats out when I need to. Basically 4 bolts. You won't need to put a wrench on the back of them or anything. And we'll cut these out and see if it all fits. Here's what it looks like. Goes on there. Got a couple of them I need to massage just a little bit. And then I hit it with just a little DA texture there. I realize it doesn't look good yet, but it's a first pass. Don't worry about that. I'm thinking eventually I might polish some of these panels, which would be kind of fun. But this one I just took a first pass at a DA with kind of a bigger grit just to see what it would do. That looks pretty cool. Fired up the old Bendermatic, whatever that thing's called, don't remember. And I'm making these. This is 1/4 inch by 1.5 inches, I think. 1/4 inch by 1.5 inches, maybe it's 2 inch. I don't remember, whatever. 1/4 inch flat bar here, bends in it. And this is gonna stand the hood up to a nice height to where it's nice and tight to this tube, but it's not sitting on it totally. So I need to go make another one of these. I'll tack them in, I'll mark first where the holes are gonna be, and I'm gonna thread these. I'm trying to pick up some Shannon Campbell tips from his scrambler build, threading things instead of using nuts. So I'll thread it, and if it doesn't feel strong, then I can put a nut on there and weld it. But gonna be kind of excited to be able to use the factory hood with pivots. Tap one-handed apparently. Tapping holes. Just like that, we have hood hinges. Don't have a hood prop, but I could get a factory one and make it work, which would be pretty trick. I have the perfect spot up here to fit the battery. And according to the rules, you can't have the battery in the passenger compartment. And even though I did before, nobody ever noticed, but maybe that's a new rule. So first tab here, I added a corner onto the battery box and a Zeus fitting. And I need to come up with a way to capture the back and whatnot, but it all needs to be removable because the winch goes and the battery goes and the crossbar goes when the motor comes forward and out. So first step there, I'm happy with that. And then this plate's just holding it up, but I'm gonna figure out a way to capture the back here, and maybe I'll bring something down to the top. We'll see how it works. Came up with here, we got one here, 1 or 2, 3 there. Pretty solid, but I'm gonna add one more thing. I think that's gonna go up from here to here. That'll be easy to remove when I wanna put the battery in and out, and then can remove the whole thing when the engine needs to come out. Not the most elegant looking thing, but it comes in and out. It's lightweight. This is just ugly. It just needs some kind of dress up there, but I'll think of something later. But it is solid as a rock, and I can pull the whole thing out in no time. Got the passenger door off the TJ tonight. Going to lay my other door over it, get those lined up, and I'll have a nice easy template to Sharpie and cut. This door clamped on. I'll get the 3 tabs, match the other side, 2 hold it on. You notice the gap here is weird. The door is where it needs to be, matches the other side. The fender is where it needs to be, matches the other side. But I think this fender was shaped different on the TJ because the tub under the door had been bowed up for so long. It was probably in fact, I know it was well tweaked before I even back half the TJ and made these fenders. So I think on this side, I'm actually going to cut this up higher. Well, maybe I'll do something like this, and then the bottom, or the main panel that fills all of it, will fill that shape. And and I'll make it look nice to where you wouldn't notice it's different on either side. Not relevant at all. So the door matches, the fender's gonna match. Just gonna change a little bit of the shape here, and I should be able to get that figured out when I put the new skins on, because I'm gonna trace it from the backside. Picked up some more metal, some 1 3/4 120 wall DOM, some 1/4 inch rod, I don't know what you call that, but an 8x12 sheet of aluminum, which is what I should have been buying the whole time, but I didn't know they sold them in 8x12s, and some angle iron. Tonight's project, I'm going to try and make my own press brake. So let's see what plans to build the side of this table as the press brake. So there's going to be, this is 3-inch quarter wall angle iron. I've got 2 5-foot sections of these. One's going to be the bar that clamps to the table. The other one is going to be the bar that pivots on the edge to bring it up. Now, first complication here, if I bring my angle iron to the edge of the table, is the table flat? I knew it wouldn't be like crazy flat, but it's especially not flat. So I'm actually gonna try every side of the table and see if there's one that's flat enough. If it's not flat enough, it won't clamp the metal down at all. It doesn't have to be crazy good flat for what I'm doing, but I'm gonna check all 3 sides and see what I can get, or all the rest. None of the sides of the table were very flat, so I decided to use up some of my angle iron and make an edge on it. 1/4 inch thick, so theoretically I could put a couple of like 1/4 inch pucks here and burn them on so that the sheet sits flat, but frankly, once the sheet's clamped in here, I don't think it matters if there's that gap to the rest of the table. But the angle iron obviously is straight, so I put it across, stitched here, and for example, you know, nice tight gaps here, quite a big gap here, a little bit tighter there, quite a big one there, but it doesn't matter because now I'll be bending against the angle iron, so I got a nice flat edge. Marked out these pockets I'm gonna cut out of the plate here and part of the table underneath it to be able to recess the hinge down in it to get it to where it can sit flat and bend up. Okay, hinges are here. This is 2-inch 188 wall that I used for the sliders in the buggy. Progress shot here. This is our angle iron that we started with. This is 2-inch 188 wall square tube, which does not have as sharp an edge as angle iron would have right in the face here, but as it bends up, hoping that doesn't matter. I don't know, we'll find out. Hinges obviously can get cut down and things like that, but it's all tacked together. And I basically took my time tacking these to make sure it would bend, aka the hinges were straight and on the same pivot. Kind of limited in what it can do. It can't quite go up to a 90 because the tube gets into the angle iron there, so maybe I need to space them out a little bit further. Just fine tuning here. And then next we're gonna make our angle iron top plate that'll go in between here to clamp the material down. I had to adapt and improvise here. So what I had was more of this 3-inch angle iron that normally you would flip, so the spine is up and it's clamping the material down. But if you do that, the distance between here and here is more than 3 inches and would not clamp down on the channel that I have on the table. So instead I chose to run it flat so that it would clamp down. Out of these ends, these where the bolts are gonna go through to clamp it down. And then I put some other angle iron I had and a little spine in there so that when it's on the metal, it doesn't deform this angle iron, hopefully. And we'll have enough clamping force. So I think now to drill the holes, and then I'm probably gonna add a second 2-inch beam to this section so it's got a little more engagement of the metal here. Not the best planned or executed project I've ever done, but basically drilled a hole in the bottom plate, then I welded a nut on top, 1/2-inch bolt to suck it down. Same over here. Obviously you've seen the cross beam, and then I added a second piece of metal here, this 2-inch 188 wall square to give the plate a little more to index on, and then welded a handle down here so I can do that. Again, I got my clearances a little bit weird on where the hinge pivots, so it doesn't want to go above 90, but it's actually getting inside of there, so I could, I think, trace this crack with a cutoff wheel just to open it up a little bit. I'll do that when the day comes that I decide I need to bend a 90 degree, but let's put some metal in here. Now, most of the time when people build these, they do an A-frame structure where it puts pressure down on the center. I just wanted to see if I would need it or not, but this is some piece of door scrap. This is 125 wall 6061. Let's see if it'll bend. It bends. There was a little bit of climb here in the middle, so maybe I will go ahead and make that A-frame here because I want to be able to bend thicker pieces, but that's a good start. Test number 2 with A-frame. I think it's going to work good enough for what I'm doing. The press brake finished, I decided to stop doing sheet metal stuff, move on to the engine skid plate, which once this is done, I can pull the front axle out and weld a bunch of things. But this is the Hummer H3 oil pan. I have no idea if it's shared with other things, but you notice it's pretty deep sump back here. So you could say, put a shallower pan on it, you get higher belly height. But that deeper sump, deeper pickup, I think is going to do better at controlling slosh, keeping oil in it when it's on a hill. And oil pans are expensive, and I don't see a good reason to get one. So I'm going to make a skid that captures it. And if it comes down a little bit, it's not a very big skid plate, and it's going to be slippery. I'm not worried about it at all. So what I have here is a 35-degree angle. I pie cut that at 17 degrees. And that's basically getting it to the lowest point is right here where the drain plug is. And I'm going to make it fit just like that. This end will come up here to wherever I decide I want it to end. And let me put the phone down and figure out if this angle works. As you can see, the first one's notched on both ends. Currently replicating it for number 2. Here's what I came up with. This is going to go down on the cross member. These are going to get tube couplered. And then a couple of support legs for the skid going across. And then this is going to get a tube going across where you see the cope. But I'm going to take it down there, see if it all fits before I do anything more. The first time I had these coming out straight and then capped about here. But I needed to narrow them because the upper 4-link bars looked like they might get into it on full droop or articulation. And then I made this longer. I'm going to put a cross tube here so that the crank of the motor or the crank pulley is like right about here, not getting into the tube like it was before. So I had to do some creative arts and crafts here, but I'm going to hand notch this with a grinder on both sides, get a tube that fits, and that should give me something to pick up the front into the chassis, which will be the next big challenge. Tube couplers are in. Basically had the full length tube just marked where I wanted to cut, sawzalled out, and then a little bit of grinder fitting to make sure they're even, which they are. One thing I don't like about these tube couplers compared to some others is they have a bolt on both sides. So I initially put it side to side, but that would mean when I take the skid plate off, I have to get it to go sideways to come out of the coupler. See the way it's coupled there? So instead, I want it to be able to just fall down when I unbolt it, but I'm gonna have to see if I can reach up and even get an Allen into that thing. Let's go check it out. Bullet tacks holding it in there. As you can see, drain plug's the lowest point. There's a little bit of margin to where when I skin this, everything will be nice and clear. I could do an oil change, just pulling the skid plate skin, or pull the whole plate, doesn't matter. Up there, there's that tube I was talking about that's in front of the crank pulley of the motor, but should still have enough clearance for belts and things like that not to be an issue. Right now, floor jack's holding it, so gonna move up and start figuring out how I'm gonna tie the front of the skid plate in and not get in the way of the 4-link bars, which you see if I just did a tube straight up to the chassis, it'd go right through the top of the 4-link bars. So, okay, side view of the skid plate. So, give you an idea of how below the belly it is. That's a saggy 2x4 holding the chassis up, so it goes about 2.5 inches below the bottom of the belly. But right now the rig's at full compression, so if it hit that, it's got a nice ramp to it. I think it's going to be pretty robust and slippery, and it's not very wide either. So as to leave enough room for drive shaft. That's what a half day of grinding, cutting, and welding looks like. I have washed my face twice, by the way. Check out these arms. Woo! Anyway, I'm going to make a tube cross member. You can see it's notched on either end already. That's going to go across the 2 rails of the chassis. Basically, if you like your frame rails, then they're going to get couplered with this style of coupler. And I'm using this style because it allows me to leave the most open space between the frame rails, which I'll need to slide the motor out. I drilled these out to 1/2 inch because I had a lot of 1/2 inch bolts from the old U-Haul truck. So I mark where I'm going to cut on both sides, so I'll chop saw that off, and then I'll take another mark to take about 1/2 inch of overall tube length out on each side to slide the couplers in, tack it all together, fit it in the chassis, and then from that cross tube, I'll be able to put legs down to the front of the skid plate. One side's glued together, again, notched there. The other side, this is just about 1/8 inch of it too long, so I'm gonna knock this down, and then I can put it all up in the car, and I'll tack this side in the car and tack the coupler to the tube on the side. You can see the tube up in there. Obviously that side's holding itself together. This wood block's being my 3rd and 4th hand. But I'm gonna measure front to back, make sure it's good there. Hold it up in place over here, get a tack there. And then I'll be able to go onto there, eyeball it, make sure I'm landing right in the middle of the coupler and all that stuff. But this should be wide enough and far enough forward, hopefully, that getting the motor out past these flanges is not a big deal. Here we have our verticals. Everything's tacked together. Get you a better view here. Boop-a-doop. So it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts, and the whole skid plate will come down. And then I'm also gonna make the skin removable. So for things like oil changes and stuff, I'll be able to leave it in. I'll just pull the skin off. Pretty cool. On to the next. Time to find out if this thing works. I bent some welding rod in the shape that I think I want for the doghouse. And I don't know if it's gonna be possible, but if I can make this thing out of one single piece or even just 2 with some bends in it, that'd be awesome. But it's bending, fired up. I'm super pumped. I wasn't incredibly happy with how the brake turned out, but look at this. It's bending it real nice. It's not deformed, not chewing anything up. And this is 125 wall 50, 51 or 50, 52. I forget what grade they call aluminum. But it's bending it, and it's 13 inches long. Probably wouldn't want to do much longer than that at this thickness, but this is pretty thick, so I'm pretty pumped on that. All right, use my welding rod template. Never mind the tail there. This is bent a little bit sharper than the rod was, but I'm not worried about that because I can always take some of that out of it. But this has given me a good idea where to start my next bend. And then I know that between these two, I want it to be 90 degrees because this plate's gonna go straight up. This bends to follow the contour of the tubes I put around the motor. And then this will get it to 90. So I'll put my angle finder on here, figure out what this is, just subtract this angle from 90 and we should be in business. Pretty hard to get to my little handle with enough torque and also film, but let's see what we can do. Just like that. So that turned out to be about 45 degrees. This one's also gonna be 45 degrees. So let me get my little welding rod here just to be sure and sneak up on that bend. Well, would you just look at it? I'm tickled. I think that's gonna work. Obviously this firewall here is sloped, which is gonna make this very tricky, but I'll be cutting a bunch out of the top and then trying to match the angle down to get it where it wants to seal up against these tubes as good as possible. That'll be the next challenge. But I think this is right on the money. Don't mind, I don't know, some aluminum comes with the paper on here, but basically I think we're right where we need to be. So I need to mirror it on the other side. Going for the last bend here, see if we can do it. Just doing what I can to try and mark the contour of where I think it is, this being front towards the engine. I'm also going to split the doghouse this way. This bend turned out to be a little bit too far out. Should have been in about 1 inch. And this tail is a little bit too short, which I figured that would be. I'm not worried about it at all. I don't mind it being a 2-piece thing because I can basically run a strip of aluminum and rivet the whole thing together, and then it's going to get tied into the backbone. So it's not going to be an area where it leaks air, and with the equipment I have, I wasn't expecting to do it in one piece anyway. That being said, I did get pretty close. So time to break out the scary saw and cut some stuff. I'm not really sure how I could have made the firewall to make this easier. Just sucking the engine back here is kind of a pain, but I got one Zeus fitting up there on top. Next one's going to be to set this guy side to side in line with the tube, trying to give me some space for my foot on that pedal. It's possible after all this, the pedal will need to get moved over, but I'd sure like to avoid that if possible. But I'm going to go flatten one of these guys out because it's a real tight space over there, and I'm not sure if I can get the welder in there, but I sure hope so. I think this is where the day ends. Plans to take some angle iron and fit the doghouse after I make the other side, and then a solid plate can go on the back there. And then I'll decide if I want to tie into that for the shifter and things. I'm kind of thinking I don't, but I don't know. Sky's the limit. Over here to the little arts and crafts down on the bottom. Got a pad here so it keeps my foot out of the way, you know, rather than a hard lip there. Not the most comfortable thing in the world is your foot's a little bit offset, but I knew it was going to be that way, and that's all right. Other side fitted up. Rivets on top, and again, it'll be reinforced in the back. So far, pretty happy with it. I need to replicate basically the Zeus fittings on this side over to the other side, and then I can start making the plate to close this off. And then of course you'll notice it comes to here, there's going to be a subsection that comes down and picks up there. I've made the shop such a mess with aluminum shavings. I think it's time to call it a night and clean up.